Hey guys, I'm Eric Voss, and yes, I'm in a new studio. It's a whole work in progress, but I don't have time to talk about that because Westworld just finished its first season on HBO. And like many of you, I'm sure, I was totally blown away by this show. Obviously, this was way more than just another HBO show with self-indulgent violence and sneaky nudity. Oh right, I should not be watching this in public. Sorry, kid. Oh crap, does this mean I have to go to jail now? I think it does. Okay, I shouldn't say anything more without a quick spoiler warning. Trust me, theory videos are just not as interesting without watching the source material first, so go watch a show and then come back here. Okay, the season finale confirmed one of the big theories that Westworld fans have speculated about online, that William is a younger version of the Man in Black, and therefore their two narratives are taking place in two totally different time periods. And actually, it's not just these two storylines that are presented out of chronological order. The whole season is ordered in a way to structure the various reveals so that they'd have the biggest impact. So in this video, I'm gonna help you better understand everything by reordering the story of Westworld Season 1 in chronological order. Also, I made another video that specifically explains everything about the ending, so if you have any questions or lingering confusion, go check out that video. Okay, let's get started. Westworld's various storylines take place across three major time periods. The first period is before the park officially opens. The second occurs a few years later as the park was growing as a tourist attraction. And the third, the main time period, the modern present time, occurs 30 years after that. And actually, we now know what year the present day time period takes place in. So the promotional site for the Delos Corporation released a video on the night of the premiere showing security footage, and the date on that footage is June 15th, 2052. Now, I should say that on this website, they have since removed this video and replaced it with this, taking off the date. So while they may end up changing the year further down the road like in season 2, the timeline still holds up. That means we can use that date as an anchor and work our way back to the beginning. And since we know that Arnold died 34 years before that date, that sets his death as April or May 2018, and the chronologically earliest scenes are set in 2015 to 2018. In Ford's flashback in episode 3 as he explained the park's early days to Bernard.
For 3 years, we lived here in the park, refining the host before a single guest set foot inside.
This is also around the time when Arnold first creates Dolores, which we see at the beginning of episode 10. Then throughout the season, there are various scenes where we see Bernard, who we later realize is actually Arnold in a flashback, having secret sessions with Dolores, encouraging her to continue to question her reality and seek the maze. And by the way, if you have any questions about that maze, check out my other video. So these all happen between 2015 and 2018 before the park officially opens, when Arnold was still feeling the grief of losing his son, and he became obsessed with the idea that the hosts should reach consciousness. Then in 2018, Arnold reaches a breakthrough with Dolores, starting with this session that we see in episode 4.
You think the grief will make you smaller and sad? I feel spaces opening up inside of me.
So Dolores' creativity and how she expresses her grief surprises Arnold, and it convinces him that hosts are capable of achieving human consciousness, and therefore the park must be shut down. This leads to a disagreement between Arnold and Ford, resulting in Arnold ordering Dolores, merged with the murderous Wyatt character's behavior, to join Teddy in massacring all the hosts along with Arnold himself. We actually saw flashes of this massacre throughout the season, but the whole thing goes down officially in episode 10. So this scandal almost destroyed the park, but Ford managed to save it, suggesting that Arnold's death was a suicide because he was working through Dolores, and Ford is able to cover up the hosts gaining consciousness to keep the park open. Okay, so Westworld opened officially a little later in 2019 or 2020, and around 2022 starts the second major time period of this show, with young William and Logan joining the story. So at this point, Escalante has been buried in sand, and Dolores and Teddy have been reset on new loops, with Dolores as a farm girl who dreams of escape, and Teddy as her doomed lover who keeps her home, ending with her parents and Teddy being killed by outlaws. So William, as a young man, interrupts this loop, taking Dolores along with him on his journey. And everything we see in this storyline, the search for Slim, the trip to Pariah, and meeting Lawrence as El Lazo, the train, the chase from the Ghost Nation, and the arrival at the former location of Escalante, and running to Logan and the Confederados, and William's transition into a dark, violent killer with the black hat, this all takes place in this second time period. We also see the photo of William's fiancée and future wife Juliet in Times Square, which her brother Logan carried around for some reason fall from William's bag. And of course, this would be discovered by Abernathy 30 years later in the present. So from there, William's story is a little less clear. He implies to Dolores in episode 10 that he had come back to the park and went on the same journey with her over and over. And many of their scenes from throughout the season, like waking up in episode 4, or being on the train in episode 7, or refinding the town in episode 8, episode 10 suggests that these all could be from subsequent times with Dolores over the years. And I know my mind is kind of breaking as well, but let's move on. So in episode 8, the Man in Black William told Teddy his backstory, which fills in the gap of the second time period. He replaced Logan in the Delos Corporation, became a primary funder for the park, basically keeping it afloat. Then he took over as a titan of industry and took over as the majority shareholder of Westworld. Meanwhile, Arnold's scandalous suicide was erased from history. Ford was credited as the sole creator of the park, and after Arnold was long forgotten about, Ford constructed his host Bernard in Arnold's image. And the two of them together wiped the memory of every host who showed signs of consciousness and gradually worked together on Ford's master plan, which I get to in the other video. And that brings us to our final time period, the present day around 2052. William, now an older man, returns to Westworld after his wife's tragic suicide, seeking meaning. He kills Maeve, the homesteader's daughter, and shocked by her very human emotional response when she attacks him, he realizes that hosts may be on their way to gaining consciousness and actually hurting humans. And he hopes that this darker, more dangerous side of Westworld is what lies in Arnold's maze that he's heard so much about, and now he intends to find it. So everything that we see with the Man in Black version of William, attacking Dolores, scalping Kissy, using Lawrence and Teddy to find Wyatt and Escalante, and reuniting with Dolores in hopes of learning the truth about the maze, this all takes place in the present timeline. Meanwhile, around this same time, Dolores is retracing her footsteps alone on the journey she made with William in those earlier years. That's why she experienced these visions throughout the season in her past storyline, showing her the image of the maze while everyone else around her disappears.
Don't you remember?
Remember.
Also, at some point during these solo wanderings, Dolores got pulled in for examination by Ford. That was in episode 5. Then, when Dolores arrives in Escalante in episode 9 with Logan's stab wound from the past timeline suddenly gone, and she went down under the church to remember killing Arnold and fought and got stabbed by the older version of William, that was all in the present in 2052. And of course, everything involving Ford's new narrative and Bernard and Elsie learning the truth about the park, and then Bernard maybe killing Elsie, and Teresa and Charlotte plotting to oust Ford, and then Bernard definitely killing Teresa, and Maeve achieving consciousness and trying to escape the park with Felix, Hector, and Armistice. This is all obviously in the present as well. So the final images we see chronologically are of Dolores and the other hosts beginning Ford's new narrative, massacring Ford and the Westworld Board of Directors, while William happily realizes that the horses are actually dangerous now, and this could be fun. And the rest of the Westworld employees are left scrambling inside the park as Maeve, Hector, and Armistice still run amok. Now, part of what made Westworld Season 1 so brilliant is that it foreshadowed the reveal of this non-linear chronology with little clues while doing just enough to throw off the scent. So the two biggest misdirects were in episode 3 and 4. So we see Dolores in her present 2052 time period shooting Rebus in the barn after remembering the older William and then escaping, and shortly afterward finding younger William joining him on their storyline in the past. So the show puts these two scenes one after the other to trick us into thinking that they're part of the same storyline, when really they're just different scenes from two parallel journeys 30 years apart. The other misdirect comes in the next episode when Stubbs, obviously in the present timeline, sends a host to escort Dolores back into her loop.
We've got a host making a pretty big deviation from her loop.
Which one?
The rancher's daughter from Sweetwater.
Dolores. Is she accompanying a guest?
Unclear.
Now, the text says it's unclear, and that's just vague enough so that when we see this random host show up to take Dolores away from William in the next scene, 30 years earlier, we can assume that these storylines are actually just separate events. So Westworld presented these scenes in this order to trick us into assuming this story was being told linearly, so that as all the little inconsistencies and connections began to pop up throughout the season, it created this slow realization that something deeper was going on. And all these clues were a lot more subtle than then Lawrence somehow ending up in 2 different storylines. So let's look at some of them. First, as William arrives in Westworld in episode 2, notice how the park logo is different than the one we see in all the other storylines. In fact, it's the same retro logo that shows up on the old computer that Bernard digs up in episode 6. Also, the madam of the Mariposa brothel that greets them isn't Maeve. It's this other host, because Maeve would have been back in her previous loop as the homesteader mother. We also see that same former madam show up in a Westworld highlight reel that confuses Maeve back in the lab. Then, of course, the Sweetwater recruiter in the past storyline is a Union soldier, as opposed to the sheriff in the present storyline. And then, of course, there were just like a ton of parallel lines of dialogue echoed between young William and older William.
I used to think this place was all about pandering to your baser instincts. It doesn't cater to your lowest self, it reveals your deepest self.
Because that's what this place does, right? Reveals your true self.
You said this place was a game. Last night I finally understood how to play it.
You know about games.
I don't play on the deal.
Who said anything about you playing? I play.
I used to believe there was a path for everyone.
As another old friend of mine likes to say, there's a path for everyone.
So those are just some of the clues that I found interesting, but I'm sure there are even more when we'll go back and rewatch this season. I know I will be, because we have plenty of time before Westworld Season 2 comes out. And again, make sure to check out the other video I made breaking down everything that happened in the ending of Westworld Season 1. There's a lot of interesting stuff in that video, definitely worth the watch. Okay, thanks for watching this video, and let me know what you think in the comments. And then please hit like and subscribe to New Rockstars and share this video with your friends. You can also contribute to us on Patreon. So thanks so much to all of our current donors. And if you aren't currently a patron, we'd love your support. Okay, you can follow me on Twitter @EAVoss or New Rockstars on Twitter @New Rockstars. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.